The telescope lens was still warm from the afternoon sun when Felicity Hayes first saw the blood on the sailor's map. Spilled rum mixing with crimson droplets that obscured the coastline she had so carefully charted the night before. The year was 1878, and the small observatory perched above Linden, Texas, had become her sanctuary from a world that could not quite understand a woman who preferred the company of celestial bodies to that of gossiping townswomen. She had been charting stars for passing sailors for 3 years now, ever since her father had died and left her both his knowledge and his brass instruments, and she had developed a reputation along the Gulf Coast as the woman who could guide ships through the darkest nights with her precise celestial maps. The sailor who stood before her now, clutching his bleeding hand, looked embarrassed by the mess he had made. "Forgive me, Miss Hayes. Cut it on a nail coming up the path. Did not mean to ruin your work." Felicity quickly moved to help him, wrapping his hand in clean cloth she kept for cleaning her lenses. "The map can be redrawn. Your hand is more important." She worked efficiently, her fingers steady despite the unexpected interruption. "You are with the merchant vessel that docked yesterday." "Yes, madam. Captain sent me to fetch the charts for our route to New Orleans. We sail with the morning tide. They will be ready by midnight. Come back then and mind that path. I really must convince someone to fix those loose boards." She watched him descend the hill carefully before returning to her desk. The observatory was not grand, just a sturdy wooden structure her father had built with a rotating roof section, but it commanded a view of the distant coastline and, more importantly, an unobstructed view of the heavens. She was redrawing the ruined section when she heard boots on the steps again. "I said midnight," she called without looking up, assuming the sailor had returned too soon. "Did not realize you were taking appointments." The voice was unfamiliar, warm and slightly amused. Felicity looked up to see a man in the doorway, hat in his hands, dusty from travel. He was tall and lean with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that seemed to catch the lamplight. Something about his posture suggested he was used to wide open spaces rather than enclosed rooms. "Name is Emmett Quinn. I apologize for the intrusion, but I saw your light and thought perhaps you might help me with a problem of navigation. I chart courses for sailors, Mr. Quinn. If you need directions in town, the hotel clerk would be more appropriate. Not that kind of navigation." He stepped closer, and she noticed he carried a worn leather journal. "I am a cattleman, or at least I was. Sold my herd last month and have been thinking about what comes next. Spent the last week staring at maps and realized I have been charting a course based on what I thought I should want rather than what I actually want. Someone in town mentioned there was a woman who could read the stars, and I thought maybe the stars might have better advice than my own confused mind." Felicity set down her pen, intrigued despite herself. Most people who climbed to her observatory wanted charts or, occasionally, a peek through her telescope. They did not come seeking philosophical guidance from the cosmos. "The stars are fixed points of light, Mr. Quinn. They do not offer advice, but they guide people home. That is what I need." "Guidance home, except I am not certain where home is anymore." He said it simply, without self-pity, just a man stating a problem that needed solving. Something in his honesty made her gesture to the spare stool near her desk. "Sit. Tell me about this navigation problem of yours." Emmett Quinn sat, placing his hat on his knee. "I spent 15 years building a cattle operation from nothing. Slept under stars more nights than I can count. Rode through every kind of weather Texas can throw at a man. Lost some good friends along the trails. Nearly died twice myself. Last year my partner got married and wanted out. I bought him out, then realized I was building something that required a reason beyond just building. Does that make sense?" "Perfectly. Purpose without passion becomes mere habit. Exactly that. He leaned forward slightly. So I sold it all. Have money in the bank for the first time in my life, and absolutely no idea what to do with it or with myself. Thought about going to California, thought about going back east where I came from originally. Nothing felt right. Then I was having dinner at the hotel, and the owner was talking about how his son was saved from a shipwreck last year because of charts you made. He said you could see patterns in the heavens that helped people find their way. I know it is not the same thing, but I am at a loss. Felicity studied him carefully. He was handsome in a weathered way, probably close to her own age of 26, and there was something genuinely lost in his expression. What do you imagine I can do for you? I was hoping you might teach me to read the stars. I have navigated by them while driving cattle, but only the basics. I thought if I learned to really see them, to understand their patterns, maybe I would find some clarity. And honestly, Miss Hayes, I would welcome a purpose while I sort things out. I could work for you, help with whatever needs doing around here. Place looks like it could use some repairs, and you mentioned something about loose boards on the path. You were listening from the path. That is eavesdropping, Mr. Quinn. Guilty. But I was trying to decide if I should interrupt, and then that sailor came down looking pale, and I figured you were occupied. He met her eyes directly. I am not a threat to you, Miss Hayes. I am just a man who has spent too long moving cattle and not enough time moving himself forward. I will pay for lessons if that makes it more proper. Felicity turned to look at her telescope, considering. She lived alone up here with only occasional visits from the townspeople below. Her mother had died when she was young, and her father had raised her in this observatory, teaching her mathematics and astronomy and navigation. After his death, she had continued his work, but it was lonely. She had friends in town, but they were occupied with their families and increasingly seemed to view her as an oddity, the spinster astronomer on the hill. The thought of having someone to teach, someone genuinely interested in the stars, held unexpected appeal. I do not need payment, but I could use help with repairs. The roof mechanism is sticking, and yes, that path is a hazard. If you are serious about learning, I will teach you. But I have actual work to complete tonight, charts for that sailor who was just here. You would need to return tomorrow. Emmett stood, and his smile transformed his entire face. Tomorrow, then. What time? Sunset. The stars are best viewed as they first appear, and I can teach you the basic constellations. From there, we will see if you have the aptitude for actual navigation. I will be here. Thank you, Miss Hayes. Truly. After he left, Felicity tried to return to her work but found her thoughts wandering. She told herself it was simply nice to have a student, that the prospect of company was pleasant after so much solitude. But she found herself remembering the way he had smiled, the earnestness in his voice when he spoke of being lost. She understood that feeling more than she cared to admit. Her work fulfilled her intellectually, but there were nights when she looked at the stars and felt the weight of her isolation. She completed the sailor's charts by midnight as promised, then slept a few hours before waking to check the clarity of the coming night sky. It was early October, and the weather was finally cooling from the brutal Texas summer. The stars would be bright and clear. Emmett arrived exactly at sunset, carrying a toolbox. Thought I might look at that roof mechanism before we start, if that suits you. Losing light for studying stars but gaining it for mechanical work. The roof can wait until after the lesson. I want to see if you are genuinely interested or just being polite. I am many things, Miss Hayes, but falsely polite is not one of them. If I am here, it is because I want to be. They climbed to the roof platform, and as the first stars emerged, Felicity began to teach. She started with the basics, the North Star and how to find it, the major constellations and their patterns. Emmett listened intently, asking intelligent questions that showed he was thinking about what she said. He knew some of it from his years trailing cattle, but admitted his knowledge was purely practical. I could find north and judge the time of night, but I never thought about why the stars moved the way they do, or what it meant, he said, staring up at Orion as it rose in the east. You make it seem like a language. It is a language, one of the oldest we have. Ancient sailors crossed entire oceans reading these same stars. She pointed out Betelgeuse and Rigel, explained how the constellation's position changed with the seasons and latitude. Navigation is about understanding where you are in relation to fixed points. If you know where the stars are, you always know where you are. Is that how you navigate your life? By fixing your position in relation to constant things? The question was more perceptive than she expected. I suppose it is. My father taught me that knowledge and reason are the fixed points by which we should measure everything else. When he died, I held onto that. Sounds lonely if you do not mind me saying. Perhaps, but it is predictable and prediction has value. She adjusted the telescope, focusing on Jupiter. Look here. You can see 4 of its moons. Emmett looked through the eyepiece and went very still. I have been looking at that light my whole life and never knew I was seeing other worlds. That is remarkable, Miss Hayes. Felicity, she said, surprising herself. If you are going to be coming here regularly, you should call me Felicity. Then you should call me Emmett. He straightened from the telescope, and in the starlight she could see he was smiling. Does this mean I passed whatever test you had for me? It means you are not entirely hopeless. We will continue tomorrow night if you wish. I do wish. Very much. The pattern established itself quickly. Emmett would arrive each evening, work on repairs to the observatory for an hour, then study the stars with Felicity until late into the night. He proved to be a quick study, his practical knowledge of the night sky combining well with the theoretical understanding she provided. Within a week, he could identify all the major constellations and several of the navigational stars. Within 2 weeks, he was learning to use her father's sextant, measuring angles between stars and horizon. But it was not just astronomy they discussed. As the nights grew longer and they spent more time together, they began to share stories. Emmett talked about his years driving cattle, the challenges and small triumphs of that hard life. He spoke of his family back in Virginia, parents who had died of fever when he was 17, leaving him to make his own way west. He described friends lost to stampedes and rivers and simple accidents, the constant awareness that death rode alongside men in his profession. The loneliness was the worst part, he said one night in late October as they sat on the observatory roof, taking a break between lessons. You would think being surrounded by other drovers would mean companionship, but everyone was so focused on the work, on surviving each day. There was not room for much else. I had acquaintances but few real friends. No one who really knew me, if that makes sense. It does. I feel the same way often. Felicity found herself opening up to him in ways she rarely did with others. People in town are kind enough, but they see me as an oddity, the woman who wastes her time staring at the sky when she should be finding a husband and having children. They do not understand that this is not a waste to me. It is everything. Why should it have to be one or the other? Why could not a woman do this and have a family? Because men do not generally want wives who are more interested in celestial navigation than domestic duties. And honestly, I have never met a man whose company I enjoyed enough to consider giving up my work. Emmett was quiet for a moment. That makes sense. You should not have to give up something you love. The right person would understand that. She glanced at him, wondering if he understood the implication of his words, but his expression was thoughtful and distant, watching the stars. They had been carefully proper with each other, maintaining the relationship of teacher and student, but Felicity was increasingly aware that her feelings were developing into something more complicated. She looked forward to his arrivals each evening, found herself thinking about things he had said during her days. When he laughed at something, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. But she pushed those feelings aside, telling herself she was being foolish. Emmett was here to find direction for his life, not to become entangled with his astronomy teacher. He would learn what he needed, decide on his next path, and leave Linden. That was the logical progression of events. In early November, a severe storm rolled in from the Gulf, bringing heavy rain and wind that lasted 3 days. Felicity worried about damage to the observatory and was relieved when the weather finally cleared. Emmett arrived that evening looking concerned. "Was about to ride up here during the storm to check on you, but the hotel owner talked me out of it. Said you had weathered plenty of storms up here and would not appreciate me treating you like you could not handle yourself, but I worried anyway. I was fine. The observatory is well built. But I appreciate the thought." She led him inside and immediately saw his expression change to alarm. "Your roof is leaking. Look at that water damage." Felicity followed his gaze to where rain had clearly come through, staining the wooden ceiling and dripping onto her desk. Some of her charts were water damaged, and her heart sank. It must have been the wind. Something came loose. Emmett was already examining the rotating roof mechanism. "Here is the problem. This seal has deteriorated completely and the wind worked it loose. I can fix it, but I will need materials from town and it will take a full day of work, maybe 2. Will you let me do that for you? You have already done so much. Felicity, you have given me something to think about besides my own confusion. You have shared your knowledge freely, taught me to see the world differently. This is the least I can do. Let me help." She agreed, and Emmett spent the next 2 days repairing the roof properly. Felicity tried to work on other tasks, but found herself constantly aware of him, the sound of his work overhead, his occasional appearances to consult with her about the mechanism. On the second day, she brought up lunch from town and they ate together, talking about everything and nothing. "Tell me honestly," she said as they finished the meal. "Have the stars helped you find your direction?" Emmett set down his water cup and considered the question. "Not in the way I expected. I thought learning about them would show me where to go next. Instead, they have shown me what I was running from, which is connection. Real connection with another person. I have spent 15 years telling myself I was building something, working towards something, but really I was just avoiding the risk of letting anyone close. After my parents died, and after watching friends die on the trail, it seemed safer to keep moving, to not settle anywhere or with anyone. But that is not living. That is just existing. What will you do with that realization? I am not sure yet, but I know I do not want to keep running." He met her eyes directly. "These past weeks with you have been the best I can remember in a long time. I wake up looking forward to the evening, to our lessons and conversations. You have become important to me, Felicity." Her heart was beating faster, but she kept her voice steady. "You have become important to me as well. Important enough that you might consider letting me court you properly. I know I am just a former cattleman with no clear prospects, and you are an accomplished astronomer with important work. But I would like to try, if you are willing." Felicity looked at him. This man who had appeared at her door seeking navigation, and who had somehow navigated his way into her well-ordered life. The logical part of her mind warned that this was complicated, that he was still figuring out his path. But a deeper part, the part that had been lonely for so long, urged her to take the risk. "I would be willing," she said quietly, But you should know that my work will always be important to me. I will not give up the observatory, the charts, any of it. I would never ask you to. I want to know you as you are, not as some edited version of yourself." He reached across and took her hand carefully. "We can figure the rest out together." The courtship that followed was unlike anything in Felicity's experience. Emmett continued to help with the observatory, but now their evenings included quiet conversations, shared meals, and a growing intimacy that felt both thrilling and comfortable. He told her about his dreams for the future, ideas for a life that might involve staying in Linden, perhaps investing in land for a small ranch, something manageable that would not require constant travel. "I keep thinking about teaching," he said one evening in December as they worked together on a set of charts for a ship captain. "People heading west need to know how to navigate, how to read the land and sky. Maybe there is something there, some way to use what you have taught me. You would be good at teaching. You explain things clearly when you talk about cattle and trails. Learned from the best." He smiled at her, and she felt that now familiar warmth. "Have you thought about what you want beyond continuing your work here?" "I have been so focused on maintaining what my father built that I have not let myself imagine much beyond it. But lately, I have been thinking about publishing a comprehensive guide to celestial navigation, something that would help both sailors and overland travelers. The charts I make are useful, but a proper book would reach more people. You should do it. You have the knowledge and the writing ability. I have read your notes, Felicity. You make complex ideas accessible." She had never seriously considered herself a writer, but the idea took root. Over the following weeks, she began organizing her notes, thinking about structure and content. Emmett encouraged her constantly, asking questions that helped her clarify her thoughts. Their partnership evolved into something that felt profoundly right, both working on their individual projects but supporting each other. In January of 1879, Emmett formally asked if he could speak with Felicity about their future. They sat in the observatory on a cold, clear night, the stars brilliant overhead. "I have been in Linden for 4 months now," he began. "Came here lost and have found something I did not expect. You have shown me what a real partnership could be, how two people can maintain their individual purposes while building something together. I love you, Felicity. I love your intelligence and your passion for the stars and the way you explain the cosmos like it is poetry. I love that you challenge me and teach me and make me want to be better. I want to build a life with you, here in Linden, supporting your work and building something of my own alongside it. Will you marry me?" Felicity felt tears in her eyes, surprise and joy mixing together. "I love you too. I did not think I would ever find someone who understood this part of me, who did not see my work as competition for my attention. Yes, I will marry you." They married in March, a simple ceremony in Linden with the townspeople who had watched their courtship with approval. The hotel owner gave them a small reception, and the toast was given by the same sailor whose blood had ruined Felicity's chart that day the previous October. "To Miss Hayes, who saved my life with her charts more than once, and to Mr. Quinn, who had the sense to see what a treasure he found on that hill. May you navigate life's waters together with the same precision she brings to the seas." They moved into the observatory together, with Emmett building an addition that gave them proper living quarters while maintaining Felicity's workspace. He purchased land near town and started a small ranch operation, but his real passion became teaching navigation skills to settlers heading west. Word spread quickly that the former cattleman could teach practical survival skills, while his astronomer wife could teach celestial navigation. They began holding classes together, combining their knowledge in ways that proved invaluable to travelers. Felicity continued her chart work, but she also began writing her navigation guide. Emmett helped with editing and with creating clear diagrams. Working together in the evenings, both on their respective projects and on the joint teaching, became the rhythm of their life. In September of 1879, Felicity discovered she was pregnant. The news brought mixed emotions. She wanted a child, wanted to build a family with Emmett, but she worried about how it would affect her work. Emmett quickly set her mind at ease. "We will figure it out together. Your work is not going to stop because we have a child. We will adapt, make changes as needed, but you do not have to choose between being a mother and being an astronomer. You make it sound simple. Not simple, but possible. People do it, Felicity, we can too." Their son was born in May of 1880, and they named him Daniel, after Felicity's father. He was a healthy baby with his mother's dark eyes and his father's calm temperament. Emmett proved to be a devoted father, taking on much of the care while Felicity recovered, and then adjusted to the new reality of motherhood combined with her work. The first months were exhausting, but they found their rhythm. Felicity worked during Daniel's naps and in the evenings when Emmett could watch him. She finished her navigation guide that winter, and Emmett helped her find a publisher in New York who was interested in practical guides for westward expansion. The book would be published the following year. As Daniel grew into a toddler, he became fascinated by the telescope, and both parents delighted in his curiosity. Emmett's teaching practice flourished, and he developed a reputation as the man who could prepare travelers for any situation the frontier might present. Felicity's charts remained in demand, and her book, when published in 1881, sold better than anyone expected. "You are teaching people across the country now," Emmett said when the first sales reports arrived. "Your father would be so proud." "I think he would be proud that I found a way to continue the work while also having a life beyond it. That was something he never quite managed. He loved my mother, but I think he always felt divided between his work and his family. You have shown me it does not have to be that way." Life settled into a comfortable pattern over the next few years. Daniel grew into a bright, curious boy who loved both stars and horses. In 1883, Felicity gave birth to their daughter, Margaret, who proved to have her father's easy laugh and adventurous spirit. The observatory on the hill became known throughout Texas as a place where science met practical wisdom, where travelers could come for charts and guidance before heading west or to sea. Emmett expanded his teaching to include young men from town who wanted to learn ranching and navigation skills. Felicity published a second book. This one focused specifically on astronomical observation for amateur scientists. They worked together to update and improve the observatory, installing newer equipment as it became available, and building a small classroom structure nearby for Emmett's larger teaching sessions. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, they would often sit together on the observatory platform as they had during their courtship, watching the stars and talking about their days, their dreams, their plans. "You remember that night you first came here?" Felicity asked one evening in 1885, 7 years after they had met. "You said you needed someone to chart your course." "I remember. I was so lost, thought maybe the stars would tell me where to go. Did they, in a way? They brought me to you, and you helped me see that I did not need to chart a course to somewhere else. I needed to find where I belonged. Turns out it was right here with you, building this life together. You asked me that first night to chart our course together. I have been thinking about that recently, about how accurate that phrasing was. We have been navigating together, adjusting our path as needed, but always moving forward together." Emmett took her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her palm. "Best navigation I have ever done. Every choice that led me to that night, to climbing this hill and asking a beautiful astronomer for help. Every single one was worth it to end up here. I used to think the stars were the most reliable things in the universe, fixed points that never changed. But they do change, just slowly. And even though they are constant from our perspective, they look different depending on where you stand, what season it is, what time of night you observe them. I have learned that from you, that constancy and change are not opposites, that you can be reliable and still grow. You have taught me to see patterns where I only saw chaos, not just in the stars, but in life. To trust that there is order and meaning, even when it is not immediately obvious. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the familiar constellations wheel overhead. Felicity thought about the younger version of herself, who had been so certain that solitude and scholarship were her destiny, who had protected herself behind the walls of knowledge and routine. That woman would not have recognized this life, would not have believed that partnership could enhance rather than diminish her work. Daniel appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Papa, I had a dream about the rings of Saturn. Can we look at them tomorrow?" Emmett stood and scooped up his son. "We can look tonight if you want. They are visible right now." "Your mother is sleeping," Felicity warned. "We must be quiet." The three of them crowded around the telescope, Emmett holding Daniel up so he could see through the eyepiece. The boy's gasp of wonder made Felicity smile. This was another kind of navigation, she thought, teaching the next generation to find their way by the stars, passing on the knowledge that had guided humanity for millennia. After they put Daniel back to bed, Felicity found Emmett on the platform again, staring up at the sky. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling beside him. "About how much my life has changed. 7 years ago, I sold everything I owned because I could not see the point of continuing on the same path. I had money but no purpose, freedom but no direction. Now I have a wife I love more than I knew was possible, 2 incredible children, work that matters to me, and a future I am excited about. It seems impossible that one decision, one night of walking up a hill to ask a stranger for help, could change everything so completely. I think about that too. How close I came to saying no when you asked to learn about the stars. I almost told you I was too busy, that I did not have time to teach someone who would probably lose interest after a week. My whole life would be different if I had made that choice. What made you say yes?" Felicity considered the question carefully. "Honestly, you seemed genuinely lost, and I understood that feeling. I had built this life that looked purposeful from the outside, but I was isolated and lonely. When you talked about needing to find your way, it resonated with something I had not wanted to admit about myself. I think part of me hoped that helping you might somehow help me too. Did it? You know it did. You helped me understand that purpose and connection are not opposing forces, that I could love my work and also love you and our children. That having a full life did not mean abandoning any single part of it, but rather finding balance and support." Emmett pulled her close, and they sat wrapped in each other's arms, the telescope beside them pointing at distant galaxies. The night air was warm, carrying the scent of the prairie grasses and distant mesquite. Somewhere below, Linden was settling into sleep, the small town that had become their home and the launching point for their shared life. "I need to check some calculations for a ship leaving tomorrow," Felicity said eventually, though she made no move to get up. "Captain Richardson is attempting a new route and wants verification of the star positions for that latitude. I should review my lesson plans for next week. Have a group of settlers coming through who need to learn basic trail navigation before heading to New Mexico." Neither of them moved. These moments of quiet connection had become precious, small pockets of time when they could simply be together without the demands of work or children. Finally, Felicity laughed and stood, offering him her hand. "Come on. We can work together like we used to. You review your lessons, I will do my calculations, and we can keep each other company." They worked side by side for the next 2 hours, occasionally asking each other questions or sharing observations. It was deeply comfortable, this partnership they had built. Around midnight, they finally called it a night, checking on both sleeping children before retiring to their own bed. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm they had established. Daniel developed a passion for both astronomy and horsemanship, spending his time split between his mother's telescope and his father's horses. Margaret proved to be a gifted artist, creating detailed sketches of constellations and ranch life with equal skill. Both children were raised with the understanding that their interests mattered, that they could pursue multiple passions without having to choose just one. In 1888, Felicity's work received recognition from the Naval Observatory in Washington, which began using her charts as reference material for training their own navigators. It was a significant honor, and a delegation traveled to Linden to present her with a formal commendation. The ceremony was held at the observatory, with the entire town turning out to celebrate their resident astronomer. Emmett stood beside her during the presentation, beaming with pride. When asked to speak, he kept it simple. "My wife has spent years ensuring that sailors and travelers could find their way home safely. She gave me that same gift when I was lost, and I am grateful every day that she shared her knowledge and her life with me." That night, after the celebration had ended and the children were asleep, Felicity found Emmett on the platform as usual. "You know what I realized today," she said, settling beside him. "I have been charting stars for passing sailors for over a decade now, and I never get tired of it. Every chart is different, every calculation matters. But the work I am most proud of is the course we charted together. That has been the most important navigation of my life. I asked you once to chart our course together. You have done that and so much more. You have shown me what it means to have a true partner, someone who challenges you and supports you in equal measure. Our children are seeing that example, learning that marriage can be a real partnership rather than one person subordinating themselves to the other. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been if you had not come here that night? If you had gone to California or back east instead? Sometimes. But I cannot imagine it would have been better. Maybe different, but not better. This is where I was meant to be. With you, raising our children, doing work that matters. I found my fixed point, Felicity. You are my North Star." She leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "That is quite poetic for a former cattleman." "I learned from an astronomer who describes the cosmos like it is music. Some of your eloquence was bound to rub off." They sat in comfortable silence, a silence built from years of understanding and shared experience. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had guided ancient mariners and frontier travelers, the stars that had brought two lost souls together on a hill in Texas. In the early 1890s, their children began to chart their own courses. Daniel, at 15, announced his intention to study astronomy formally, hoping to attend university and eventually work for the Naval Observatory his mother had collaborated with. Margaret, at 13, wanted to document the changing West through art, creating a visual record of the landscape and the people who inhabited it. Felicity and Emmett supported both paths, helping their children prepare for futures that would likely take them away from Linden eventually. It was bittersweet, knowing their time as a family of 4 under one roof was limited. But they took pride in raising children who knew their own minds and had the courage to pursue their dreams. "We did well," Emmett said one evening as they watched Daniel carefully plot a star chart while Margaret sketched the view from the observatory. They know who they are and what they want. That is no small thing. They had good examples. You taught them that work can be purposeful and that it is acceptable to change course when needed. I taught them that knowledge and curiosity are lifelong pursuits. Together, we showed them what a real partnership looks like. Do you have any regrets about the choices we made, the life we built? Felicity considered the question seriously, as she always did. No major regrets. There are small things I might change, moments I wish I had handled differently. But the fundamental choices, the decision to marry you, to have children while maintaining my work, to build this life in Linden, those I would make again without hesitation. What about you? Same. I regret time wasted before I found you, but that is about it. Everything from that first night climbing to your observatory, that has all been exactly what I needed and wanted. In 1894, as Daniel prepared to leave for university in the fall, Felicity began experiencing troubling symptoms. The doctor in Linden was concerned enough to send her to a specialist in Houston, where she learned she had a growth that would require surgery. The news was frightening, but the doctor believed he could remove it successfully if they acted quickly. Emmett was terrified but tried to hide it from her and the children. The night before they left for Houston, he held her tightly. I cannot lose you. I know that is selfish when you are the one facing surgery, but I cannot imagine this world without you in it. You are not going to lose me. The doctor is optimistic and I am strong. We have more time together, Emmett, more years of charting our course. The surgery was difficult and the recovery was slow, but the doctor had been right about being able to remove the growth completely. By autumn, Felicity was back at work, though she tired more easily than before. Emmett took on even more of the household duties and suggested they hire help for the observatory work, but Felicity refused. I need my work. It is what reminds me I am still myself, still capable. Let me do this. He understood, though he watched her carefully for signs she was pushing too hard. By the following spring, her strength had returned fully, and she threw herself back into her charts and calculations with renewed vigor. The experience had reminded both of them that their time was precious, that nothing should be taken for granted. Daniel left for university that fall, leaving a hole in their daily lives, but also a sense of satisfaction in seeing him pursue his dreams. Margaret remained at home for 2 more years, developing her artistic skills under her mother's encouragement and her father's practical support. When she eventually left to study art in San Antonio, the house felt very quiet. It is just us again, Felicity said the night after Margaret's departure, like it was in the beginning. Except we are older and wiser and have 17 years of marriage behind us, and I have more gray hair. Emmett ran a hand through his hair, which had indeed begun to gray at the temples. I like the gray, makes you look distinguished. You are just being kind, but I will take it. He pulled her close. The house is quiet, we could try to fill it with more children. Felicity laughed. I am 44 years old, Emmett. I think our child-rearing years are behind us. Then I suppose we will just have to enjoy having time for ourselves again. Though I admit, I miss the chaos of having them around. They will visit, and hopefully bring grandchildren eventually. They settled into a new rhythm, one that felt both familiar and new. Without children at home, they had more time for their work and for each other. Felicity began a 3rd book, this one a memoir of her years charting stars combined with guidance for women who wanted to pursue scientific careers. Emmett continued teaching, but he also started writing down his experiences from the cattle trail years, creating a first-hand account of that rapidly disappearing way of life. In 1897, Daniel sent word that he had been offered a position with the Naval Observatory and had also become engaged to a fellow astronomer named Caroline. Felicity cried when she read the letter, overwhelmed with joy that her son had found both meaningful work and love. The wedding was planned for the following spring in Washington, and both parents made the long journey east to attend. Seeing Daniel so happy, so clearly in his element discussing astronomy with his bride and colleagues, Felicity felt a deep sense of completion. This was what she and Emmett had worked toward, raising children who knew themselves and could build lives of purpose and connection. "He has what we have," Emmett whispered during the wedding reception. "A partner who understands his work and a career he is passionate about." "We gave him that example. We did well," Felicity agreed, watching Daniel dance with his new wife. "Both of us together." Margaret married 2 years later, choosing a fellow artist who shared her passion for documenting the West. They planned to travel extensively, creating a comprehensive visual record of the region. Felicity and Emmett attended that wedding in Santa Fe, proud and a little wistful as their daughter embarked on her own adventure. As they rode the train back to Texas after the wedding, Emmett took Felicity's hand. 21 years ago, I climbed a hill looking for answers, found everything I did not know I needed instead. I was so certain I knew what my life would be. Alone with my stars, doing important work in isolation. Then you appeared and showed me there was another way. What do you want for the next 20 years? More of this. More time with you, more work that matters, more chances to help people find their way. Maybe grandchildren to teach about the stars. What about you? Exactly that. You, our work, our family. Maybe a rocking chair eventually, but only if you are in the one next to it." They returned to Linden and to the observatory on the hill, resuming their shared life with the ease of long practice. Felicity continued producing charts, though she began training younger navigators to eventually take over the work. Emmett kept teaching, finding satisfaction in preparing new generations for the challenges of travel and frontier life. In 1899, as a new century approached, Linden held a celebration looking back on the past 100 years and forward to the future. The mayor asked Felicity and Emmett to speak about their work and its role in the town's history. Emmett spoke first, talking about how Linden had become a center for navigation training and how the skills being taught there had helped countless travelers reach their destinations safely. Then Felicity took the podium, talking about the importance of understanding our place in the cosmos and how navigation was fundamentally about knowing where you were so you could determine where you needed to go. 21 years ago, she concluded, a man came to my observatory lost and looking for direction. In helping him find his way, I found my own path forward. Navigation is not just about stars and charts. It is about being willing to ask for help, to learn from others, and to adjust your course when needed. My husband and I have been charting our course together ever since that night, and it has been the greatest adventure of my life. As we move into this new century, I hope we all remember that we navigate best when we navigate together, supporting each other and sharing our knowledge freely. The crowd applauded, and as Felicity stepped down from the podium, Emmett was there to take her hand. They walked through the celebration together, greeting friends and neighbors, watching the town they had become such a part of celebrate its past and future. That night, back at the observatory, they stood together on the platform as they had so many times before. The stars were brilliant, undimmed by the celebrations below. "A new century," Felicity said softly. "Hard to believe, so much has changed since we met." "Some things have not changed. The stars are still there, guiding people home. We are still here, still together, still doing work that matters." "Do you ever think about that first night, What might have happened if things had gone differently? Sometimes. But I try not to dwell on alternate paths. This is the one we chose, and it has been extraordinary. Felicity leaned against him, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. I love you. Have I told you that today? You have, but I will never tire of hearing it. I love you too. Always have from very nearly the beginning. Certainly from the moment you agreed to teach me about the stars and started talking about the cosmos like it was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen. I thought, this woman sees wonder in the universe, and I want to learn to see it too. You taught me that and so much more. They stood together in the darkness, the telescope beside them, the charts and instruments of their shared work surrounding them. The new century was coming, bringing changes they could not predict, but they would face it together, as they had faced everything else. Two people who had been lost and found each other, who had built a life of purpose and partnership, who had learned that the best navigation came from understanding both where you were and where you wanted to go. Daniel and Caroline visited that summer, bringing their infant son to meet his grandparents. Felicity held her grandson and felt the circle of life continuing. Another generation who would grow up with stories of stars and navigation, who would learn that knowledge and love were not opposing forces, but complementary parts of a full life. Emmett taught his grandson to ride when the boy was old enough, patient and encouraging. Felicity showed him the telescope and explained the patterns in the sky, watching as wonder lit up his young face. Margaret and her husband visited regularly as well, sharing stories of their travels and showing portfolios of Margaret's artwork. The years settled into a gentle rhythm. Felicity and Emmett grew older together, their hair graying and their steps slowing, but their partnership remained as strong as ever. They still worked in the observatory together most evenings, still sat on the platform watching stars wheel overhead, still found joy in each other's company after decades of marriage. In 1910, when Felicity was 60 and Emmett 58, they celebrated their 32nd anniversary with a quiet dinner at home. Their children had sent gifts and letters, but the real celebration was in the life they had built together, still going strong after all these years. 32 years, Emmett said, raising his glass. To the woman who taught me to navigate by the stars and then agreed to navigate through life with me. To the man who asked me to chart our course together and kept that promise every single day since. They clinked glasses and drank, then moved to the observatory platform as night fell. The stars emerged one by one, the familiar constellations taking their places in the sky. Felicity pointed out Mars, bright and reddish, and Jupiter with its attendant moons. Emmett identified Cassiopeia and Orion, his knowledge as deep now as hers after decades of study and practice. I still remember the first time I looked through that telescope, he said, gesturing at the instrument. Seeing Jupiter's moons and realizing I was looking at other worlds. It changed everything about how I saw the universe. You changed everything about how I saw my life. I was so certain I knew what it would be, and then you showed up and expanded all my horizons. We did that for each other. Best navigation either of us ever did. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened and more stars appeared. The town below was quiet. Linden settled into evening routines. From their hill, Felicity and Emmett could see the lights in windows, families going about their lives. They had been part of this town for over 3 decades now, had helped train and guide countless travelers, had raised their children here and built something lasting. No regrets, Emmett asked, though he knew the answer. None. You, not a single one. This has been exactly the life I needed. Even though I did not know it that night I climbed this hill looking for answers. You were the answer, Felicity. You and this life we built together. She took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. We have more years ahead of us, more charts to make, more students to teach, more grandchildren to spoil, more evenings like this watching the stars together. Our course is not finished yet. No, not finished, but I am grateful for every step of the journey so far. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, all of it has been worth it to be here with you. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead, the same stars that had guided sailors across oceans and travelers across continents for millennia. The same stars that had brought together an astronomer and a cowboy, two lost souls who found each other and charted a course that led to love, partnership, and a life of shared purpose. The telescope stood ready for another night of observation. The charts waited to be drawn, and the future stretched ahead full of possibility. Felicity and Emmett sat together on their platform above Linden, Texas, grateful for the past and eager for whatever came next, confident that whatever challenges or joys lay ahead, they would navigate them together as they always had. The stars shone down on them, constant and unchanging, yet always offering new wonders for those willing to look closely and chart their courses with care and courage.